So my topic is colonization, and the country that I chose is Algeria. So let's get started on the historical context. So first of all, the French colonization of Algeria began in 1830 when France, with the goal to suppress piracy, invaded and eventually annexed Algeria. This marked the beginning of a century-long oppression and the imposition of French culture, language, and governance. Uh, the colonization process involved a vast expropriation of lands, well, which were redistributed to European settlers. They were known as colons or pieds noirs, which basically means Blackfoot in French. And these settlers established a colonial economy that really favored European interests, meanwhile marginalizing native Algerian population. And there has been new governance system that further institutionalized racial discrimination. And throughout the period, the French have been the sorry, and throughout the period, the Algerians have resisted the French rule in forms of various protests and rebellions. One of the earliest ones are uh, done in the first decade of French rule, and it ended in 1847 with the French winning eventually. And in 1848, Algeria was declared part of France. Okay, so next is the impact of the French colonization of Algeria. The impact was profound, and there was a lot of aspects impacted. So first of all, it's there's economically the colonization led to the exploitation of Algeria's natural resources. So the French took and ransacked the Algerian resources, natural resources, during the century long French rule, and Algerian farmers were dispossessed of their lands, and those lands were given to the European settlers, forcing many Algerians into poverty. Socially, the French imposed a racial hierarchy with the European settlers enjoying privileges on a daily basis. Uh, but meanwhile, the native Algerians themselves, they did not enjoy such privileges and were considered as second-class citizens. And culturally, the French colonization uh, suppressed Algerian identity and replaced them with French ones. The education system, for example, is a good one. It was designed to indoctrinate young Algerians with French values, French history, and French language, while simultaneously marginalizing Arabic languages and Islamic traditions. This process made the younger Algerian generation uh, lose its roots with their Algerian culture and become more in line with French cultures and loyalty. There's been this book that I've been reading uh, that I have read as well for the past year since I've started taking interest in this topic. The book is called The Wretched of the Earth from Franz Fanon, and he describes how colonization dehumanizes the colonized, stripping them of their culture and self-worth. And he also argues that the psychological violence is as destructive as the physical violence in this colonization process. Okay, so let's move on to the aftermath of the war for independence in Algeria. So after many years, many decades of oppression, the Algerian people started to rebel, and eventually it led to the Algerian War of Independence, which began in 1954. The war was very brutal, and it had consisted of many civilian casualties. The National Liberation Front, or NLF, led the charge for the independence. They basically united many Algerian nationalists into one single faction for Algerian independence. They're basically the war had been devastating for both Algerian and the Algerian uh, natives and the French settlers as well. The French government, they were unwilling to lose their most, let's say, prized colony. They employed severe and strict counterinsurgency measures, including the use of torture, mass arrests, and the execution of any suspected FLN. Oh, sorry, NLF members. This includes innocent people who were wrongly accused and then executed or tortured. And Franz Fanon himself, he lived through the war itself and wrote the book during the war. I believe he was a medic during the war, so he was a veteran himself. And he argues that the process of decolonization is inherently violent because it involves the reclamation of identity and dignity that has been systematically denied. And the war ended in 1962 with the French losing eventually, and it ended with the Evian Accords in March 1962, and they gained independence on 5th of July 1962. However, the French colonization did not simply vanish uh, in one day after the independence or something like that. The new Algerian government had to pick up the pieces of what's left of their country and rebuild it, and which to today still have problems, but they're still trying to rebuild their country. There has been economic and social inequalities established during the colonial periods, and there have been some French settlers that did not leave the country even after gaining its independence. This is because some of them might have had good relations with the locals, or some just feel like they belong in Algeria more than they belong in France. And next, let's go to the analysis. The French Fanon's work, The Wretched of the Earth, was very good in terms of looking through the lens of those who have lived through the events. And the book Wretched of the Earth provides a powerful framework of understanding the psychological and social impacts on the colonization itself. Fanon himself describes how the colonized are subjected to the process of dehumanization that seeks to erase their identity and replace it with that of the colonizer. So the French seeks to erase Algerian culture and replace it with the French culture. And the Algerian War of Independence was a response to the dehumanization, a violent but necessary struggle to reclaim the Algerian identity and sovereignty. The war's aftermath, however, has been shown that the colonization is not easily overcome, even after the battle. They have to uh, do some social changes and they have to overcome those changes. And in conclusion, overall, I think that the colonization of Algeria by France was a hard time for the Algerian people itself because their identity has been their identity has been tried to be replaced with French ones, and that didn't work uh, almost. And they, in the end, won the war for independence and reclaimed their identity back. But it was a violent war. So, and thank you for watching.